thank you for joining us in another special Jak and Daxter cast interview. The last time we had a cast member on our channel was former voice actress Brittany Ray, who voiced Tess in Jak and Daxter 2 and 3. Today's guest, however, played a huge role in the Jak and Daxter game series. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the voice of Tor and Jinx himself, Cutter Garcia.
Hey, good to be here. Thank you for having me. I've been pretty great. I mean, we have some beautiful weather happening here in Southern California, and it's just perfect. I know that we're all dealing with this COVID stuff right now, but as far as weather and everything else goes, it's wonderful to be here in LA.
Originally, we were going to plan this out with the voice of Ashland.
Yeah, she's fantastic. So when that does happen, your listeners will absolutely love her, and yeah, it's great that you're doing what you're doing.
Can you elaborate on how you began your career as an actor? And according to our research, you're also a on-camera actor as well?
I am. That is what originally brought me out here to Los Angeles, and then was fortunate enough to get into the voiceover world as well, and that's been good to me too, so it's been a lot of fun.
So what was your first role in voiceover?
I know exactly what it was. I don't remember what the product was, but I went in on my first audition to my voiceover agency, and this was a long time back, and I recorded the audition, very first one I ever recorded, and I got a call, I don't know, the next day or 2 days later, saying that I had booked the job, and so I just assumed that it was that easy. I just assumed you booked every single job that you auditioned for, and obviously that isn't the case, but that is how I started. I started with, I'm pretty sure it was a radio commercial.
So what was your first role in animation? Was it a video game or was it a cartoon series?
I don't think it was a video game. I think it was, it had, in fact, I do know what it was. It was Max Steel. I was in a cartoon a long time ago as a bad guy, and it was Max Steel. Do you remember that animated show? Oh, maybe I'm thinking Ben 10. No, I think it was Max Steel. I think Max Steel became a movie. I don't know. It was so long ago. I have unfortunately forgotten the details. But my first animated thing, my first cartoon was, I believe, Max Steel.
Yeah, and I think you're thinking of Ben 10 when it becomes a movie. I think Ben 10 was a movie at some point.
Yeah, I know Ben 10 is a different element from Max Steel, 100% different, but I don't remember which one became the movie, unfortunately.
So the question that we all want to know is how you became the voice of Torn in the hit PlayStation 2 video game, Jak 2.
Well, the thing with Torn was, I don't know if everybody out there knows, but generally the way that these things work is you just get your sides, which are your audition pieces, pages from the script, and if you're real fortunate, they'll send you a picture, and you record these things. Now we're all recording them at home, but back in the day, you would go into your voiceover agency and have a few minutes with the copy, getting to look at the script, and hopefully if there's a picture, that helps you a lot because you get a feeling for what kind of character it looks like, and so then you can make your decisions and make your choices from that. But in all honesty, I don't remember if Torn had a picture or not. A lot of times when things are top secret, they won't let out any of the images, but they do provide a character description. And so I just went into the booth, I gave it my spin, and was fortunate enough to get the job.
Do you know anything about Torn in his description or background information that was never made public that fans might not know?
No, I don't. But let me ask you something. As a fan of the game, I know that there was a big fan reaction to Jak possibly getting involved with Ashland or flirting with her, and she was Torn's girl. What was your take on that whole thing?
I don't know what to say there, just because, well, the only thing I could say that it was a bit weird that they never picked up on that. I know there was some Jak and Ashland action I think on the third game or so, they would show Kira and Jack having a thing since, Jack 2, and then all of a sudden they show Ashland with Jack in a kiss scene, and then they make it up with Ashland and Torn in Jack X. So I don't. I would find it weird just because it doesn't follow that chronological order. But now that we're touching on the subject, what was your opinion of that love triangle between Jack, Torn, and Ashland?
Well, the thing is that I think they're such a great couple, and to me, they reminded me very much of Bogey and Bacall. And for any of your listeners who don't know who they are, please go and Google them, and hopefully that'll give you a little bit of insight. Torn is the tough, rugged, you know, hardcore guy, and Ashlyn is so educated, beautiful, and smart. And then this guy Jack comes in, and he's a young whippersnapper hero. And I could see where that would be a problem for Torn, because Torn isn't really a guy that shows a lot of love. It's just not in his build up or his nature. So when he sees and meets and falls in love with Ashlyn, I think Torn, who's not afraid of anything, finally maybe got upset a little bit.
But there's a scene in the game where Ashland actually kisses Jack.
Yep, I got to tell you, when you think about, I felt for Torn during that process because, man, when you think about it, he was the Crimson Guard guy, and she's Praxis's daughter. If that's a spoiler, I'm so sorry. Hopefully that isn't. And, they have history together. And Torn does not strike me as the kind of guy that opens up his heart a lot. He's not skipping down the road singing love songs with rainbows and unicorns in the sky. He's the exact opposite of that. So when he finally opened up his heart and he let her in, that's a very big deal for Torn. So her smooching Jack was upsetting, I know, to fans from all the stuff I read. And for me personally, I felt like, oh, man, what are you doing, man? Torn's a good guy. So that's where I was on it.
I believe in Jack X, they make up with it with, there's a scene, I believe, with Torn and Ashland together, kind of being romantic to one another. So they kind of make it up there.
Oh, they so do, and I think that was probably the reaction from a lot of fans, because that scene is a great, and thank you for mentioning that. It's a really great scene where Torn gets kind of soft and mushy, and that is so not the kind of guy that Torn generally is. So it's good to know that he has a heart and that it's warm and loving, at least towards her.
This Crimson Guard has feelings.
Yes, exactly.
Has your voice been featured in Japanese animation, otherwise known as anime?
Yes, I have done anime before with a company called Bang Zoom, and they are pretty fabulous. And I've done a lot of different projects for them. Figure 17, that's one. Do you know that show?
Yes.
That's one that I remember, Figure 17. And I've done a bunch for them. But for animation, a lot of different cartoons and stuff like that.
According to our research, you did a character named Todoroki in Redline and a character named Joe in Last Call.
Last Call was actually on camera,
right? Yes.
And Todoroki was obviously anime.
Going back to Jack 2 and your character as Torn, when you were voicing Torn, did you ever get to work with any of the other cast members or any of the other Naughty Dog executives?
Yeah, I worked with Dan Airy a lot. Dan was the writer and the director, and Dan could not have been a cooler guy. As I'm sure you're aware, when you do voiceover work for games and cartoons, you're generally all alone. There are no other people there in the booth with you. So if you're having a scene with another character, they're not there. You record your stuff and they record their stuff later. But so I would be there with Dan, and Dan would be giving you notes, and Dan would explain and give you background. because again, there's no animation, there's nothing in existence, so you really rely on the director in that situation. So I did get to meet and work with Dan quite a bit, who's great.
And with that being said, it's safe to say you never met Susan during the recordings of Jak and Daxter.
No, I never met anybody while I was recording sessions. I just, maybe incidentals in the hallway, hi, or whatever. But no, I never met anybody personally.
Till this day, have you met anyone from the cast?
Yeah, you know who I met? I met Mike Irwin in a bar.
No
I
way.
was in how
appropriate.
I was in a bar, and this is, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I don't recall specifically, but I was in a bar and I recognized him. And I'm not normally a person that recognizes people that much. And I walked up to him, and it was awkward because I'm also not the type of person that generally will walk up to you and say something unless we're, hanging out together. But I said, "Hey, are you Mike Irwin?" And he said, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you played Jack, and I played Torn in the Jak and Daxter games." And he couldn't have been a nicer guy, but he's the only other one, I'm pretty sure he's the only other one I've met.
How appropriate, considering Jack and Torn have a history of being at bars.
Exactly.
What about the fans? Have you met any of them?
I haven't met specifically, well, I don't know if you want to call it that. I've met several people online from the game, and let me tell you something. The Jak and Daxter fans are unbelievable. I have not had one experience meeting somebody that's a problem. Every single person that I've met online that's reached out to say hello or whatever has just been so incredibly, incredibly wonderful. And I think that this game, I see the reaction. I myself am not a big gamer, but I see the reaction that fans have to this game, and it makes me very proud to have been a part of it because of the love that people have for that game. People are just so wonderful about that.
Going back to the recording sessions for Torn, was there a voice that you initially started with and later progressed to the current and present voice of Torn?
That's great. I think originally what I imagined him, and I don't know if all of your viewer or listeners will understand this, but in my mind, he was Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin was a tough, older guy who was the mean guy and the tough guy and this kind of guy. And so I went with that, but I probably put a little bit more New Yorky spin on it. And I think that was the way that Dan pulled me back a little bit. Dan, I originally went in with more of kind of a street thug, Sopranos type of New York accent, and Dan toned it down, and it was a really smart choice. Dan directed me to make him less New York, and that's it, just less New York, which as a split off left room open to then voice Jinx.
Hey, Jackie boy, long time no see.
And because Jinx is much more of the quickie, sort of like a Joe Pesci, what's going on over here, that kind of guy, having Dan take away the New York accent from Torn allowed Jinx to have that accent. So, yeah, the original take I went in with was much more sort of stereotypical New York thug.
Speaking of Jinx and Joe Pesci, I think you do a great voice match for Joe.
Oh, that's awesome. I get that. People say that. They make fun of me and tease me quite a bit for that, but that's great to hear. Thank you. There are certainly worse people to be compared to.
But hey, if there's ever a Home Alone animated series with Michael McCulkin, at least we'll know who will be Joe.
That'd be great.
I know earlier you mentioned that you're not a huge gamer, but have you played Jak 2?
Well, I played the second, and boy, let me tell you, the respect that I have for people that got through or can get through that second game, man, there was such a jump from the first game, which, and please, all video game players out there, please don't be offended if I use the incorrect terms. What I mean is that first game, to me, felt more easy, I guess, or I don't know, not easy, but easier. And then that second game came out, and holy cow, they really kicked up all the tricks and all the stuff you had to do. So I did play the second game, and unfortunately I found myself getting easily frustrated because I'm not a gamer, but I think that's what you gamers love, is the challenge. Did you play Jak and Daxter?
Oh yeah, the entire collection.
And so did you find the second game the hardest, or how was it to you?
For me, the hardest was Jak 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because now there's not just one city, it's two. So all the challenges you had in one city are now in two. In addition, Naughty Dog went ahead and added whatever they forgot to put or whatever they couldn't put in Jak 2 to Jak 3. And of course, that was even more challenging. But for me, overall, the most challenging boss in the entire trilogy of Jak and Daxter would have to be the final boss in Jak 3.
Well, let me ask you something then. If you're a fan of the game, what I love about the game is I love that it's a 3-game series with a continuing storyline that goes through it, that, like any fantastic movie trilogy, you get to the end. Now, at the time, I believe that was relatively new in the video game world, or am I wrong about that?
I don't have a solid answer to that question just because I don't know, but I do remember that in the late 80s, early 90s, Japan started making games that way with titles such as Final Fantasy, Biohazard, which is known as Resident Evil here in the States, Parasite Eve, I think I mentioned Final Fantasy, so many others, Star Fox, For Japan, in that respect, it's nothing different. They've been doing it for a long time. Here in the States, I would say the whole thing began in the early 90s, just because I remembered Crash Bandicoot having, the first game, then the second game, then the third game was a Crash Team Racing game, I think. Just like Jak 1, Jak 2, Jak 3, and then Jak X. So,
just from the things that I've heard from fans and from reading the boards and stuff, I think that helped. And I know you're saying it was already being done in Japan, but I think that's why fans love the Jak and Daxter series so much, is because of the continuing story.
yes, yeah, but to answer your question in one solid answer, yes, Jak and Daxter was one of the few games that actually had that trilogy, only to wrap it up, much like the original trilogy of Star Wars,
Exactly,
Yeah,
great example.
So it was one of the, yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I liked it too. It's just because the story spanned off. And it wasn't one of those stories that made me want to say, okay, I'll just finish it up here and I won't get the other game. You cannot not get the other game because you wanted to know more of the story, what happens. And so I think when the fourth or fifth game came out, I think that's why fans were disappointed, because by then Naughty Dog didn't have the rights anymore, and it was a totally different company that excluded all the other characters, like your character, all the other characters just completely vanished. It was only like the main cast.
From what I understand, I think it was Jak and Daxter, then there was Jak 2, then there was Jak 3, and then there was Jak X.
Yeah,
So
which kind of throws me off a bit, because that's like a racing game.
Right. And then after that, wasn't there The Lost Frontier?
Yes, and that's the one that a lot of people criticize because it wasn't made under the creative director's original story, nor was it created by the same company, Naughty Dog.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's like, again, using the Star Wars reference, that's like George Lucas and all of a sudden J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
During the recording sessions of Jak 2 or 3, what were the most memorable parts of recording lines for Torn?
Boy, I don't know. I'll tell you, that's such a great question. Really, really, really great question. I think probably in Jak 3, which was my second game. I know that sounds confusing. I started with Jak 2, which was my first game, and then my second game as Torn was Jak 3. And at some point in there, just going back to the well, the first day back, after you've done the second, or the second, after Jak 2, you go away and they take a long time to put everything together, and coming back to revisit Torn during Jak 3 on the first day of recording, that was a really, really, really special day, because I was back with an old friend, an old character, and that I loved, and he's my favorite character I've ever played. So that was a really special day for me, being brought back again to do Torn again for another game, and then the third game.
Using your own words, how would you describe your character, Torn?
Torn to me is like a Lee Marvin. I'm not certain if your younger listeners will know who he is, but if they Google him or look him up, that'll make a pretty good picture for how I originally envisioned Torn. Torn is the quiet, tough guy, the kind of guy that, if he took a laser blast in the shoulder, he's not going to moan and cry about it. He's just going to keep going because that's the kind of guy he is. And that's what I thought about him originally going in. He is the coolest guy ever.
In the game, what was your favorite scene to record?
Probably the scene in the bar in Jak 2, I think it was Jak 2, where Jak and Daxter meet Torn and Jinx in the bar that they're in.
We may have a way to reach Freedom HQ. Jinx here has a plan. Hey, Jackie boy! Long time no see! Jack, link it to the remote and direct that blast bot into the KG area. If you can get the blast bot close enough to the Freedom League border and blow it up, it should punch a hole in the defensive line there and allow us to hook up with our comrades.
So I got the great opportunity there to voice Torn as Torn and to voice Jinx, the demolitions guy, who was sort of the funny Joe Pesci type guy, and have them converse with each other, which was pretty, looking at it later when you see the scene cut together, that was pretty special to see that.
If there was ever a Jak and Daxter remake or another game featuring Torn were to come out, would you reprise Torn?
Come on, you know what that's like asking? That's like asking anybody that's ever played Superman if they would want to come back and play Superman again, or Batman, or whoever your hero is. Of course, I would be back in a second and a half. That character was so cool, and again, the fan reaction was so cool to it. I would do that in a second and a half. Funny, I haven't thought about that stuff in, wow, that's been 18 years, and it almost came back to me. That's great question. So great to have been a part of all of that. It means so much to so many people, and I'm so glad. How old were you when you started playing?
Like around 7? I want to say 7 or 10. I quite don't remember, but it was like around 7 or 10.
Yeah, see, that's the perfect, you're a kid, and that's a perfect age for that stuff, and adults too. That's, I think, is the secret to the success of J&D, was that you could be 8 years old and love that game, and you could be 30 years old and love that game. It had something for everybody in it. I think that's the secret to its success.
For the sake of our audience and Torn fangirls all over the world, can you give us a little sample of Torn?
Not likely. If you want to join something, why don't you and your pet go join the circus? Heh, unless you got the fur for a really tough task. Steal the Baron's banner from the top of the ruined tower and bring it back to me. Then, maybe we'll talk.
My childhood.
Oh, that was
so
awesome.
So nostalgic.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you for having me do that. That was that was a lot of fun.
It's bringing back memories?
Oh, totally. It's just, when I won this role, oh man, was it wonderful. Because it's like, imagine if you're 5'4" and they all of a sudden gave you the chance to be the center of a basketball team. You know what I mean? It's something you've always wanted to do, but you're only 5'4", and now you're getting the shot to do the thing you love to do, but no one ever gave you the chance at doing. So that was so, when I got that tough guy Torn, oh, did I love that. And so yeah, it's been wonderful, and I love him to pieces.
Can you do Jinx?
Let me give it a try. Let's see what happens here. Just shut your whiny traps and keep moving. Okay, let me give you just one more. I'm going to give you one more.
All right.
Just shut your whiny traps and keep moving. All right, we'll see what happens with editing.
Prior to this interview, I posted a notification that I was interviewing you in a Facebook Jak and Daxter group. And let me tell you, the fans are amazing. They've been interacting with comments and questions they hope you can answer for them. And one of the questions is, when you were recording your lines, what studio did you record it at?
I think it was in Santa Monica. I don't know why I think that, but I'm pretty sure it was in Santa Monica, and I don't remember the name of the studio exactly. Again, that was, 2002, I think, so it's a long time ago. I don't remember, but I think it was in Santa Monica.
Another question is, when voicing Torn, did you have to accommodate your voice in order to sound the way it does, or do you naturally speak the way you do? And does it hurt when you do the voice of Torn?
Oh, that is such a popular question, and it's funny because you don't hear yourself. Everybody makes fun of me, teases me, friends of mine, because of my voice, and to me it just sounds normal because I'm me. But this has always been my voice. I just have a scratchy voice. I don't know why. My parents don't have scratchy. It's just the way it is. I didn't smoke as a teen. I didn't do any of that stuff. It's just the voice I was born with.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you have a distinct voice, which I'm pretty sure helps you out through your career. In fact, I believe your voice got you a role in a video game called Eleanor.
Yep. And again, I don't remember. Yeah, I don't. I normally get stereotypically for my personality and for my voice, I either get the guy like Torn, who I love, or I get the guy like Jinx. I'm far more often the sarcastic guy on the side with making the sarcastic remarks, and those are generally the roles that I get. And it's funny, quite frequently, and when I say quite frequently, I mean 2 or 3 times a week. If a telemarketer or somebody calls me and I can't understand this for the life of me, they think I'm a woman and they call me ma'am. And yep, it happens all the time. And one day I asked someone on the other end, I'm like, and I laughed. I said, hey, just out of curiosity, I get called ma'am an awful lot. Do I sound like a woman to you? And the girl was very shy. I think she was worried she had offended me. And I'm like, I'm not offended at all. I think it's funny. And I'm like, do I sound like a woman to you? And she said, yes, you kind of sound like an older lady that smokes and drinks a lot. And I laughed. I started laughing. It was the funniest thing I ever heard. And so I get ma'am quite a bit.
That's funny. That's very funny.
Yeah.
Have your roles as Torn and Jinx opened the doors for you to play other characters in other video games or animation?
Yeah, I mean, each opportunity that you get comes from the last one. And luckily, because Torn changed sort of perceptions of what I can do, it opened up more doors to different types of characters as opposed to just the sarcastic best friend character.
Although Torn himself is not a huge character in the sense that he's not part of the main cast, like Jak and Daxter, he seems to have a huge fan base. I mean, there's a lot of fans who love your character Torn just because of the way he is, this Crimson Guard badass, you know?
Oh, that means the world to hear. Thank you so much for saying that. That's super, super kind of you. Thank you. I appreciate hearing that.
Now, this is sort of a miscellaneous question, but do you ever see Torn having his own little furry sidekick?
Oh, how great would that be? You know what? I think that could be incredibly fun for sure. I mean, can you imagine Torn with his own little Daxter, or with his own, some kind of little buddy beside him? Oh, that's a great idea. I could see that. I could see that happening. That would be a whole lot of fun.
Unlike your character Torn, can you dance?
I'm dying to see you dance.
Not likely.
Well, here's the thing. What you should know about Cutter, I don't like to brag about it, but I am probably the world's worst dancer. It's okay. People seem to love it because here's the deal. Here's the secret. If you go to any place where someone's dancing, I have a rule. The rule is dance however you feel. Whatever your skill set is, dance how the music moves you. But you always want to dance next to a guy that dances like me because you will always look fantastic. no matter what you're doing. I'm not very graceful. I do not have a lot of dance ability, but I don't care. I get out there, I feel the music, and I move my move.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Music advice from former Crimson Guard, Torn. And with that being said, unfortunately, we have reached the end of the interview. It has been such an honor to have you on the show.
Oh, I can't thank you enough. This was so great. And again, I know I said it at the top, but all of the fans out there, I did not know that there were this many Torn fans that you've just told me about. That truly made my day. And just thank all of them for being so wonderful. You know, here's the thing. There's a fine line that when people are out, being normal and just having their lives or online or whatever, people sometimes don't like to compliment people and tell them that they meant something to them. Being rude is bad. If you tell somebody they stink, nobody appreciates that. But if you tell somebody that they meant, or some work they did meant a lot to you, that means a lot to people. So the amount of times that I've heard people say how much they love Torn and what he meant to them as kids, boy, that just lifts my heart. So to anybody that's ever left a wonderful comment like that or sent me a note or whatever, that means the world. So if you have somebody that you like, never be afraid to say how much you enjoyed their work, because it means a lot to people, even if they don't look like it does.
Is there anything else you want to say to your fans or viewers out there?
Listen, freedom fighters, here's what I'm willing to do. Like, comment, and share this message with fellow freedom fighters for the opportunity to win an official freedom fighter document. It's got a picture of me and the idiot who provides my voice, but there ain't no odds, understand? And remember, Jack and I are counting on your help. Don't let me down.
Alright, you guys, thank you so much for watching. And like Tor said, like, share, and comment who is your favorite Jak and Daxter character and why. You have the opportunity to win an awesome autograph print by Cutter Garcia. For more details, check out the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll leave you guys with these awesome videos I know you'll like.